Welcome to Generative AI Futures. Today we try to build GRPO Group Relative Policy Optimization, introduced by DeepSeekMath model. And this deep dive, just so you know, is a bit of a technical continuation of our reinforcement learning series. So if you haven't checked out the fundamentals of RLHF, you might want to go back and listen to those first.
Yeah, it'll definitely help. Today our focus is really sharp. We're talking efficiency, and we're talking about boosting reasoning capabilities.
Right, and our mission is to break down GRPO, which is, it's basically the secret weapon behind the crazy performance of DeepSeekMath 7B.
It really is. For context, that's a 7 billion parameter model that hit a 51.7% top at one accuracy on the math benchmark. That's competition level stuff.
And that number is so important, hitting 51.7%. That puts a relatively tiny model, a 7B model, in the same conversation as these closed-source giants like GPT-4 or Gemini Ultra.
And they couldn't have done that with brute force. The only way was through efficiency.
Exactly. So that's GRPO.
Yep. It's an efficient, really effective RL algorithm designed specifically for this to boost reasoning in LLMs while, and this is the key part, dramatically cutting memory and compute overhead compared to the industry standard PPO.
Proximal policy optimization.
Right.
So to really get why GRPO is such a big deal, we need to talk about that overhead. We need to understand the PPO bottleneck.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're doing a standard RLHF setup with PPO, just for one training step, how many different neural nets do you need to keep live in memory?
You need 4. You have the main model you're training, the actor. That's your policy, your PPO.
Yeah, that's the brain.
That's the brain. Then you need the reference model.
Yeah.
That's a frozen copy that acts as a guardrail.
So the actor doesn't just forget everything it learned during fine-tuning.
Precisely. Then number 3 is the reward model, which, it scores the quality of the output. Was that math solution any good?
Okay, so far so good. 3 models, that seems standard. It's that 4th one, the critic, or the value model, V. That's where everything just seems to grind to a halt.
And here's where it gets, just really interesting and incredibly frustrating if you're a practitioner. The critic model is usually a full-blown neural network, the exact same size as the actor.
So you're training a 70 billion parameter model.
And you're now keeping another 70 billion parameters, plus all their optimizers and gradients, loaded into VRAM just to estimate a baseline value.
Hold on, why does the critic have to be the full size of the actor? Can't it just be a tiny little network that spits out a single number?
In theory, maybe. But in practice, for something as complex as multi-step reasoning, the critic needs to understand the entire context. It has to map thousands of tokens, this whole complex state, to one single predicted value.
So it needs the same capacity, the same heavy lifting power as the model doing the actual generating.
It does. So you're effectively doubling your VRAM requirements just to calculate this value baseline for the advantage function.
And the advantage, that's what tells the actor how much better or worse its action was than sort of the expected outcome. It's the core learning signal.
Exactly. The critic's whole job is to estimate that expected goodness. So PPO is kind of like an actor being coached by a private, full-time, and paralyzingly expensive critic. That's the cost GRPO wanted to eliminate.
Okay, so the big conceptual shift with GRPO is just profound. They fired the critic.
They did. They looked at that incredibly costly Vive model and replaced that learned network with something that's almost computationally free, on-the-fly statistics.
So instead of judging the policy against an expensive trained model,
Yeah.
you judge it against its own peer group.
That is the elegant insight right there. Why burn billions of parameters estimating a baseline when the policy itself is constantly generating new data that can be the baseline?
How does that work in practice?
For any given prompt, let's call it $2, the policy just generates a group of outputs, let's say. A group dollar. DeepSeek used a group size of 64.
Okay, let's unpack this with that tennis analogy. PPO is like our player with that world-class dedicated coach.
Right, the crit.
Who's constantly predicting how good each shot will be. GRPO is like taking that same player and just throwing him into a big practice session with 63 other players of the same skill level.
That analogy holds up perfectly. And then you judge them based on how they do relative to the average of that one session.
So you get your 64 outputs, your 64 attempts at solving the math problem. Then what?
Then you run all 64 of them through your third model, the reward model, to get a score, an individual reward, $3 for each one.
And that could be a complex score or just a simple binary thing like, did the code compile?
Exactly. Or is the final answer correct? And now comes the magic step. This is where you bypass the critic. Instead of consulting a value model, you calculate the group relative advantage.
which is just comparing an output's reward to the average reward of the whole group.
And then you normalize it. The math looks like this. No user equals the reward $3 minus the mean of all the rewards, divided by the standard deviation of all the rewards.
Okay, wait a minute. What if the policy is just terrible? Let's say all 64 outputs are wrong, but one is just slightly less wrong than the others.
Yeah.
Aren't you just optimizing for being the best of a really bad bunch?
That's a great question, and that is precisely why the standard deviation is in the denominator of that equation.
Yeah.
If all 64 attempts are terrible and the rewards are all clustered close to 0, the standard deviation is going to be tiny.
Right.
And a small denominator means even a tiny difference in the numerator gets amplified. You get a huge advantage signal.
Oh, I see. So the standard deviation provides context.
Yeah.
If the policy is performing poorly but it's consistent, the learning signal for any tiny improvement will be massive, which pushes it out of that bad plateau.
Exactly. And the reverse is true. If the policy is already excellent and most rewards are high, the standard deviation is larger. So the model only gets a big learning signal for a truly outstanding outlier performance.
It's a dynamic grading curve. It adjusts the learning rate automatically based on how hard the policy finds the problem. That's more than just a memory hack. That feels like a genuinely better way to generate the learning signal.
I think so. Now let's get into the nuts and bolts of it, the GRPO training cycle. It's algorithm 1 in the paper. It's a really clean 4-step loop, and it's fundamentally faster than PPO.
Okay, so step 1 is explore.
Right. For a batch of questions, you sample your group of, say, 64 outputs from the current policy, your buy-it-bat.
And what's the key computational win here?
It's pure forward pass inference. You don't need to track any gradients while you're generating the group, which just simplifies everything and speeds up the whole rollout.
Okay, so explore is fast. Step 2 is evaluate.
That's just running them through the reward model to get the score. Simple enough.
And then step 3, normalize. That's where we calculate the group relative advantage,
Yeah.
like we just discussed.
Yep. And that single scalar value, that advantage, gets broadcast across all the tokens of its entire output sequence.
And finally, step 4 is update, where you actually optimize the policy using that advantage.
Right. And let's talk about that objective function, GRPO. It still uses the standard PPO clipped objective, which is great for stability. It stops the updates from being too big. But it multiplies that objective by our group-derived advantage, theta IT.
Now, you mentioned a nuance here with KL divergence.
Yes, and this is a really important mathematical detail. In traditional PPO, the KL divergence term, which keeps the policy from straying too far from the reference model, is often baked into the per-token reward.
Which makes the advantage calculation really messy because the KL penalty is part of the value the critic has to predict.
It's very difficult for the value network to learn that. GRPO just simplifies it. The advantage KIT is calculated only from the group statistics, and then separately it adds the KL term directly to the final loss function as a regularization penalty.
That's so much cleaner. So the KL term isn't confusing the advantage calculation anymore. It's just a clean penalty on the loss function, pulling the policy back if it drifts too far.
It's just elegant resource management. The math is cleaner, the training is more stable, and you don't need the expensive value model. If you were building this in PyTorch, you'd basically need 3 things: a simple policy for your model, a rollout group function, and then the GRPO loss function that implements that objective.
Okay, and there's one more layer of refinement we need to talk about. The difference between outcome supervision, or OS, and process supervision, PS.
Right. Standard RLHF often just uses outcome supervision. You get one final score for the entire output. It's a very delayed credit assignment.
So for a 10-step math problem, you only find out if you were right or wrong at step 10.
And that's hugely inefficient. If you made a mistake at step 1, you have no idea. GRPO combined with process supervision, or PS, is a game changer. The reward model gives you feedback at the end of every single reasoning step.
Which means the advantage for a given token isn't based on the final score. It's, what, the sum of all the future step rewards from that point on.
Exactly, the sum of all future normalized step rewards. It's a much more fine-grained signal. A mistake early on gets an immediate penalty, and the research confirmed it. GRPO with process supervision gave the best performance by far.
So this whole structure, it really favors these online sampling methods. It makes older offline methods like, say, rejection sampling or DPO seem limited.
They are. They train on static samples generated by a base model. There's a ceiling on performance. If your policy gets better, it needs to explore its own more capable distribution to keep improving.
And online methods like PPO and GRPO do that. They learn from their own improving results.
Right. The DeepSeek paper even showed that online RFT, which does sample from the improving policy, was way better than offline RFT.
But GRPO still beat online RFT. Why?
Because RFT is just filtering. Correct is good, incorrect is bad. It's binary. GRPO uses those nuanced, continuously adjusting gradient coefficients from the reward model and the group stats. It allows for reinforcement based on the magnitude of correctness.
And the practical result of that is just undeniable. Looking at the DeepSeekMath RL result, they took their instruct model and trained it with GRPO on just a subset of English data.
Just GSM-8K and math. And the in-domain gains were huge. GSM-8K jumped over 5 points from 82.9% to 88.2%.
And the really hard math benchmark went from 46.8% to 51.7%. That's a nearly 5-point gain. That's what makes a model state-of-the-art.
But here's what's truly fascinating to me. The generalization. They only trained on English reasoning tasks, but performance also went up on Chinese benchmarks like CMath.
So it wasn't just memorizing English syntax.
No, it was amplifying the abstract underlying reasoning capabilities, a skill that actually generalizes across languages.
So let's get to the fundamental question. Does this actually make the model smarter? Does RL make it more capable? When you look at PASS at K, the model's raw ability to find at least one correct answer in K tries, it barely budged.
And this might be the single most important insight from the whole paper. GRPO does not significantly increase the model's fundamental capability to find a correct answer. It's not teaching it new math.
So what is it doing?
It is massively improving its robustness. They measured this with Maj at K.
Which is, if you sample K outputs and take a majority vote, that vote is correct. And the improvement there was huge.
It was staggering. It means the model already knew the answer. That correct reasoning path was already latent in its parameters, buried somewhere in the top K possibilities. The policy was just misaligned. It wasn't confident enough to consistently put its best answer first.
So GRPO didn't create new intelligence. It just performed a very sophisticated alignment. It found a computationally cheap way to fix that misalignment, boosting the right answer from a possibility into the top one spot.
Exactly. RL is a robustness enhancer, not a capability driver. That's a crucial frame for understanding its role. And GRPO found this resource-efficient path to do it by replacing that huge critic with simple, on-the-fly group statistics.
So if we connect this to the broader future of RL alignment, it feels like GRPO provides this stable, efficient framework. But the journey's not over. People talk about 3 levers you can pull: data source, algorithms, and the reward function.
Right. For data source, the next step has to be moving beyond these narrow SFT question distributions. We need the policy to explore out-of-distribution prompts, maybe using more advanced search methods like tree search.
And for algorithms, even with GRPO, you're still dealing with noisy reward signals. I mean, humans make mistakes when labeling. So can we build algorithms that are robust to that, something like weak to strong generalization?
Where a strong model is aligned using a weaker but cheaper reward model, it's a huge area of research. And finally, the reward function itself. It just needs to keep getting better. Better generalization, modeling uncertainty, and especially building higher quality process-level reward models.
Which we saw was so effective with GRPO. So that leaves us with, I guess, a provocative thought for you to consider. As you think about the efficiency gains from GRPO, which of those 3 things, the data source for exploration, the algorithm itself, or the quality of the reward function, do you believe holds the most potential for the next big breakthrough in LLM reasoning?
A perfect question to mull over.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.